What is my relationship with food? And is it a healthy relationship or is it an unhealthy relationship? And what does that look like? It's one of our greatest struggles with food is it's something we all need. But what do we do when we get into we develop an unhealthy relationship with food and even our body? Is there hope in that? And what do I do with that? What are some of those characteristics that we can develop that we need to be mindful of? Today we're talking around the topic of food struggles. Welcome to Hope in Recovery, a Fellowship Celebrate Recovery podcast that shares hope and healing for our mental, spiritual, emotional, and relational journey through life change stories and recovery topics, all centered around the Beatitudes, where Jesus helps us and uses it through Celebrate Recovery to help us face the hurts, the hang-ups, and habits and defenses and protections we develop that cause havoc on our relationships in our life so that we can walk in the newness of life and find freedom from whatever it is we may be wrestling with. I'm a grateful believer in Jesus Christ. I struggle with drugs and alcohol and perfectionism. My name is Rodney. I am the pastor and ministry leader of Celebrate Recovery at Fellowship Rogers. And it's so good to be back with you today. Hey, thanks for helping us by getting the word out, sharing this, giving us a review and a 5-star rating. It helps us to get to reach more people, and we're grateful for you for doing that. I could have easily introduced myself as having food issues because it is something that I've battled through my life. And today, it's an interesting topic, and we'll do some conversations around this. This is one of those topics that can't emphasize enough that you may need professional help, but Celebrate Recovery can be a great tool in addition to what you're doing in the therapy. Not everybody needs therapy, but if you do go to therapy, Celebrate Recovery can be a great resource in addition to that. And through the years, as I've talked to people, some of the conversations I've had around this topic are, it's so hard because it is something that we need every day. We need it to survive. And it can be a really tricky and confusing topic. So we'll probably do a couple different podcasts on this. I don't think you can talk enough about these specific issues, but even hear a life change story from one of our sisters that's agreed to come on and talk about her testimony around food and how she's battled some significant struggles in unhealthy relationship with food. But I was just thinking about some of those characteristics that we can develop, and here's what I want to say. Sometimes we need professional help in this space. There's going to be a need for maybe some nutritional education, maybe some therapy, someone who specializes in eating disorders if you're in kind of that severe category. But all of these are centered around addressing it just like we do anything else. And so talk more a little bit about what that can look like. But some of those characteristics, I just wanted to, if you're in a place you're saying, I wonder if I have an unhealthy relationship with food, maybe some of these will resonate with your heart and at least lean into to even ask the question, curious posture of maybe it's something I want to focus on in my area of recovery as I focus on my recovery. But one of those things, those characteristics can be we've developed a preoccupation with food and weight combined. We're constantly thinking about food. We're constantly thinking about our body weight. We're constantly thinking about dieting. So that can be an indicator. Now, if you're like me, I'm always thinking about when's lunch, when's dinner. It's not that kind of thinking because we get hungry, we think about food. We probably think about food most of our day if we're being honest. But this is where there's just a preoccupation with food and even my weight associated with food. Am I constantly thinking about every aspect of food and getting stuck, kind of preoccupied with that space, or dieting? I'm constantly dieting and thinking about my weight and trying to get my weight down. I don't like what I see in the mirror, kind of thing. We're going to do a separate podcast on body image. There is some correlation between food issues and body image, but it's really two different conversations. But talk more about that on another podcast. But one of those things around the constantly thinking, we can get into kind of extreme dieting. If you engage in kind of the severe calorie restriction. And sometimes when I'm talking to even guys, this is not a female issue. This is guys and gals. I have food issues, and what they'll do is they'll cut out everything. They shut it down. They go from one extreme to another, and that can be just as unhealthy. Where I'm only going to eat breakfast today, and as noble as that sounds, and I don't want to get into the physiological side, but you can throw your body into shock, and your body starts feeding off of things that it's not supposed to, like muscle, if it's not getting the natural intake of calories. And so we can kind of go into this extreme dieting or extreme restriction. So we engage kind of in this restriction, extreme, and very rigid with our diets. There's no room for anything. So that might be an indicator that, hey, maybe there's something I need to face in this. Or what about binge eating? This is where we'll see, and I've done this to a certain extent in my life. I have an addictive personality anyway. I tend to go all in on everything, but we can consume large amounts of food in a very short period. And in this space, we can feel really out of control. Like we've lost the sense of listening to our body that I'm actually full. In fact, there used to be a time when I would eat, if I didn't feel miserable, then my body said, you must not be full. And I would just kind of gorge myself until I felt miserable, where I could hardly sit up, could hardly breathe, kind of thing. I mean, just a real miserable place, but that consuming those large amounts of food. So I had to kind of understand that, just because I don't feel miserable doesn't mean I've not had enough. I'm full. Now, again, we want to be careful not to go one extreme to the other. I'm just going to eat one piece of lettuce. That's not good. I'm not getting any nutrients with that. I want to make sure that I'm eating a balanced meal. And sometimes we may need to go see a nutritionist, as I mentioned earlier, to see a dietitian to understand what's a good calorie consumption intake, and what should I be eating for. And not to get obsessed with it, but just have an understanding. It's like, I'm way out of balance. I just shove anything in my mouth until I'm miserable. Maybe I need some coaching to kind of help me. But binge eating can be one of those indicators that I'm consuming crazy amounts of food in a very short window. And you can feel out of control in that space. So that can be an indicator where, hey, I'm kind of in a bad spot. Or we purge. There's a purging behavior that we may have developed. And not to get graphic with that, but we make ourselves throw up. Or we have excessive exercise. We just run ourselves into the ground. I've even seen some people use laxatives to help compensate for the food intake that they're taking in. Those are not healthy strategies. Nothing wrong with exercising, but if I'm excessively exercising because, just that purging behavior, I'm kind of out of balance. And so, is this healthy? Am I allowing my body to rest? Am I giving it exercise, but not excessively? But especially if I'm forcing myself to throw up, or I'm using laxatives, that's a pretty big red flag. And so I want to pay attention to that. A big one for me was emotional eating. where I would find myself eating to cope with emotions. We kind of joke around, it's like I'm eating my sadness. But there is truth to that. We when we have these emotions, rather than dealing with the emotions, maybe we don't feel like we can deal with the emotions, the stress, the sadness, boredom. I'm just bored. There was times my wife and I kind of had this banter. She'd say, "Are you hungry or are you just bored?" And often, if I'm being honest, there were times I was just bored. And so I'd go and I'm standing in front of the pantry, I'm standing in front of the refrigerator. So I kind of had to force myself. I had to create some new strategies in that, hey, what's going on right now that I'm reaching for this? Is there something in my heart that needs to be addressed? And so I want to pay attention to that. Am I using this as a way to cope? Am I using this as a replacement for talking about it, allowing other people into that, inviting my sponsor, my accountability team? That's a big one that can be an indicator that maybe there's something that needs to be addressed, a hurt that I'm running from, that I've developed this habit, this numbing agent of eating. So something to pay attention. Maybe I'm trying to replace facing my stress, my sadness, or boredom, cover that up with eating. One of those that can be a little bit more serious is kind of this body dysmorphia. And this is where we just have this really bad or distorted perception of our body size, our body shape. Nothing wrong with saying, you know what, I want to lose some weight because I'm overweight and I don't have any energy, and so I'm facing that. But if even when we're taking care of ourselves, we look in the mirror and we still just have this distorted view and perception of our body size and our shape, even the way we look, that can be an indicator that there's something going on that needs to be addressed, to pay attention to. Again, you may need professional help for that. Celebrate Recovery can be a great tool to help us in that process, maybe in addition to therapy, but we want to pay attention to that. One thing I've seen, and I didn't get stuck in this, but I've seen this happen in this place of secretive eating, where we eat in secret or we hide food because we don't want to be judged or we don't want to be embarrassed, and so we store things, right? I've seen guys, accountability partners, that will, on their way home from work, they'll swing into I won't use a restaurant, but a fast food restaurant, and get a cheeseburger and wolf it down and hide the evidence, and then go home and eat dinner, right? Very secretive eating. Or we'll hide sweets and not tell anybody about that because we don't want to be judged or embarrassed. Again, not to shame ourselves. All these things are just to be curious about that. Am I taking on these kind of characteristics? And maybe that's something I want to pay attention to. Is this something that needs my attention, that I could lean into in this space? I'm gonna take a super quick break. When I come back, we'll continue some of those characteristics that we might develop. Again, not to shame, but just to pay attention to. Stick with me. When we come back, we'll continue the conversation. Hey friends, every Friday night we've got a meeting at Fellowship Fayetteville, Fellowship Rogers. Same schedule, different teachers, different worship teams, but the same great experience. Every week at 6 p.m. we have a great meal, a connection with other brothers and sisters in Christ, and then we meet together at 7 p.m. on both campuses. We'd love to have you. If you want more information, go to fellowshipcr.org, and we hope that you will join us this Friday night. It's never too late to start over again. We hope we'll see you this Friday night. fellowshipcr.org for more information. Welcome back. So finishing this conversation, we're talking about these characteristics. And again, I just want to keep emphasizing this. Probably say this multiple times. None of these are to make ourselves feel bad. We don't want to shame ourselves in this space. But if these are characteristics that I'm taking on, I want to pay attention to that and seek help and not try to face this on my own. So the last one I was hitting there is secretive eating. We're hiding food to avoid judgment or embarrassment. But what about the fear of eating in public? So in this space, we might be consumed with avoiding social situations that involve food because it just brings up too much anxiety or a fear of judgment. Will I be able to contain myself? Or maybe I'll have so much shame and fear I won't eat anything because I'm afraid I won't be able to handle it. And so what we'll do is we just develop this fear, and fear, it just keeps us frozen, keeps us from moving forward. Do I have a fear of eating in public? Another one is unusual food rituals that we develop. This is where we can develop specific routines or rituals. Local coffee shop, one of their slogans is it's all about the rituals. They want, if we can get you into rituals, is a tendency to stay in that pattern. And with food issues, we can develop these rituals around food. So and it sounds crazy, but we may cut our food into very, very tiny pieces, or we eat foods in a specific order. Again, this is not a huge thing, but it's just something to pay attention to, and at least asking, okay, why am I doing this? And am I developing an unhealthy relationship with food instead of using it as a way to recharge and replenish my energy, etc.? So unusual food rituals that we develop. But one of the big ones is fluctuating weight, where we experience significant weight fluctuations due to cycles of dieting. I get on a diet for 2 weeks, then I'm off, and I'm right back on for another strong 3 weeks, and then I'm off for a couple weeks. And this can include that binging and purging that we were talking about earlier. But there can be that can be unhealthy for our bodies to constantly gain the weight, lose the weight, gain the weight, lose the weight. It's not healthy for our body to do that. And so that could be an indicator. That could be a characteristic that we may have developed along the way. So those are just some characteristics, but some of those, not as a big a deal, but can turn into a big deal, can maybe like the emotional eating. Right now, that's not a big deal, but it could turn into something even bigger if I'm purging and binging because I'm emotionally eating, or I'm binge eating, consuming those large amounts. In and of themselves, not huge deals, but they can progress into other things, and they can be signs of some serious health conditions that we may have developed, and some of those need professional intervention. So I just want to keep stressing that you may need to see a therapist to at least explore and say, hey, just go in with a curious posture, and this is something that I'm doing, and I want to be honest about these characteristics. What should I be concerned with this? What can I do to kind of get on track? So having a professional setting in that can be helpful. But in addition to that, I want to emphasize that Celebrate Recovery is such a great additive to what we're doing professionally if we do need professional help. But even if we don't, just the support system that we develop in Celebrate Recovery is so huge. I want to surround myself with supportive family, forever family, that can help provide some emotional support, can provide encouragement, that smaller circle within that network that I can let them into. Hey, this is what I'm battling right now, and I want to let you know about that. Through accountability and a sponsor relationship, I can, with that person, that safe community that's not going to judge me or try to fix me, but just kind of curiously set some realistic goals, achievable goals. If I'm going, if I'm emotionally eating and then I go to nothing, That's not a realistic goal. That's not sustainable, and it's not healthy for me. So do I have some healthy goals set related to my food and my body image? Again, we're going to do a whole different podcast on body image because there's some similarities and some big differences as well. But these realistic goals can help me make some gradual and sustainable changes. When I have extreme, quick weight loss, it's probably going to be extreme and coming back quickly. And so I want to set some realistic goals. So there might be some people in your smaller circle that you let into that to say, hey, this is what I'm battling right now, and I want to let somebody into this so that I'm not alone and I can have some encouragement and some support in that. One of those things as we get into Celebrate Recovery and we start working we go through the step study small group, we make this the thing that we're working on, just like I would with an addiction to alcohol or people-pleasing, performance, whatever the thing is. That's the cool thing about Celebrate Recovery. This becomes the hurt that I'm facing. The unhealthy relationship with food is my habit, my defense, my protection that I've developed. I want to get to the root of that. Is what is it about my heart and my life that's causing me to go to this space and have an unhealthy relationship with food? I want to pay attention to that. But in that, as we're kind of walking through this, just some real practical things. I think kind of get in that space of avoiding dieting. In that space, I want to focus on overall health and my well-being rather than a real restrictive diet that can promote and help me grow in a more positive relationship with food. And that's so when I'm talking about dieting, I'm talking about just cutting out. I'm just going to cut out. And I'm just going to go to this amount. Now, if you're eating 5,000 calories a week, cutting back is good, right? And that's where a dietitian, a nutritionist can be helpful, a therapist to kind of set some realistic goals, not to diet, but to set a new health plan in place. But it may be that there's certain foods that I just cut out. For me, sugar was one of those, right? Sugar was really, really hard for me to put down. And I've shared this analogy a million times, but it just so closely relates to this. When I went to the nutritionist myself, because I'm hypoglycemic, I was a sugar addict. And my nutritionist showed me all of these, plastic foods, what you can and eat and how much and that kind of thing. And showed me a little thing of peanut butter. And it's like, oh, that's a lot less than what I normally eat. But she said, Rodney, you're going to have to cut back on your sugar and your sweets. And I don't know if I can do that. And she said something that was so profound. She said, Rodney, your body will crave what it eats. And I didn't believe her, but as I began to drink more water and I began to eat healthier, adding vegetables to my diet, and eating healthier, not so much fried food and, more grilled and that kind of thing, my body began to crave that. In fact, if I eat the extreme of that now, my body revolts. If I drink a regular soft drink, it just tastes like thick syrup to me. It just does not. And I used to drink those all the time. Even diet drinks. I used to drink a lot of Diet Coke. I don't drink those anymore. If I were to drink a Diet Coke right now, it would just taste funky to me. My body craves what it eats. I drink a lot of water now. In fact, if I don't drink water, I feel it in my body. It craves it. I get a lot of headaches. My body just got so used to water now. It craves water and it starts screaming at me. So it's not about dieting, but it's focusing on your overall health and your overall well-being rather than the diet, if that makes sense. And this sounds like Captain Obvious stuff, I know, but what's your physical activity look like these days? Are you engaged in any kind of physical activity? Now, some of you have health issues. You can't lift weights, that kind of thing. It's not about going from 0 to 1,000 and I'm going to go lift 500 pounds kind of thing. It's just getting your body moving. So if you're not doing anything, what would that be like? Even in your house, if it's really hot, just walking Take a few laps around your house. Go from one area around, just follow the walls all the way around, and take a few laps just to get your body moving. And there's things with watches and stuff that can tell you, hey, get up and move kind of thing. But just trying to do some kind of physical activity. Can you combine it with your spiritual to do a prayer walk? Who the people I'm going to pray for while I'm physically moving right now? Stress management is key, right? If I'm emotionally eating, I want to learn to practice some techniques such as just getting in time with the Lord and prayer and just silence and solitude, learning to breathe. It sounds crazy, but sometimes we forget to breathe. I mean, deep breaths, and it just gives so much oxygen to our brain to help us in our time with the Lord, just breathing with Him. Journaling is a big one. Principle 7 of Celebrate Recovery is so key, that reserving a daily time, and journaling is so key. When I was first battling my food struggles, I kept a food journal, and I gave my accountability the ability to look at that, and I would monitor how my mood was, how am I feeling. If I had a bad day, what was my tendency with my food and my menu? And so I wanted to identify some of those triggers, just like we do with alcohol or drugs, related to my eating behaviors, to my emotions. And so as I'm walking through Celebrate Recovery and facing the underlying unmet needs, emotional, unexpressed emotions, through Celebrate Recovery Step Study small groups and Open Share small groups and talking to sponsors and working the program, I slowly began to overcome those food issues as I began to develop some new habits. And it's a long-term process. We're in this for the long game, right? And that can require some persistence, openness, curiosity. So doing that, using these strategies as we build healthy relationships and we invite people into that, then we begin to develop a healthier relationship with food, with our bodies, and we begin to look at life a little bit different. And the key thing in this is maybe some of those characteristics maybe jumped out at you as, oh, that's me. What I just want you to hear is, don't shame it. Show yourself kindness and say, hey, this is something that I'm not happy with, and I want to do something different in my life. So maybe there's a battle with food that I need to just maybe make it a part of my introduction, because it's a growing issue, and I invite some 2 or 3 people into that conversation, and I began working the recovery process, the principles through the lens of food, unhealthy food relationships, and unhealthy relationship with my body, etc. And God, just like with any other struggle, begins to bring healing, even if it means adding therapy in addition to that can be a valuable resource and a healthy path towards sustainable recovery that has longevity, so that we can walk in freedom just like we do from anything else. Well, I hope that helps you. It can be overwhelming when we come to realize that there's something that's kind of jumped into the unhealthy category, and that ditch of unhealthy can be scary, but this isn't a place that we shame ourselves. Just know that whatever comes to our attention, God will be faithful. If He brought it to us, He'll carry us through it, and He'll guide us every step of the way. So if you're struggling, maybe there's some things that jumped out. Maybe you need to consider getting some professional help. Don't be ashamed of that. But if at the very least, if you want to find, in addition to some therapy or just coming to Celebrate Recovery, we have a great group of people that would love to walk through this with you on this road to recovery every Friday night. Come be a part of this. Don't face this alone, and don't carry shame if there's some things that came forward for you, okay? Hey, thanks so much for being with me today. I pray that you'll join me next time. Until then, God bless you.